The sound of breaking glass echoed through the marble hallway of the Thornfield mansion, followed by the thunderous crash of what sounded like an entire dining set hitting the floor. Victoria Thornfield closed her eyes and pressed her fingers against her temples, already knowing what she'd find when she entered the grand dining room. The 17th nanny in 8 months was probably already packing her bags, just like all the others who'd fled before her. "Mrs. Thornfield, I'm terribly sorry, but I simply cannot continue," came the trembling voice of Mrs. Henderson, the latest casualty in what the household staff had begun calling the nanny wars. The silver-haired woman stood in the doorway, her pristine uniform now stained with what appeared to be maple syrup and orange juice, her hands shaking as she clutched her resignation letter. Victoria's heart sank as she surveyed the destruction. Overturned chairs, shattered plates, and food splattered across the Persian rug that had once belonged to her grandmother. In the center of it all stood her 8-year-old twins, Emma and Ethan, their faces masks of defiant anger that barely concealed the deeper pain Victoria recognized but felt powerless to heal. "They're not bad children, Mrs. Thornfield," Mrs. Henderson whispered, her voice softening despite her obvious distress. "They're just broken, and I don't know how to fix what's been shattered in their hearts." As CEO of Thornfield Industries, Victoria had built a corporate empire from nothing, navigating boardrooms filled with ruthless competitors and billion-dollar deals with the precision of a master chess player. But standing in her destroyed dining room, watching her children's small shoulders shake with barely contained rage and grief, she felt more helpless than she ever had in her life. The twins had been different children once. Before the accident that took their father 2 years ago, they'd been bright, curious, affectionate kids who filled the house with laughter. Now, they seemed determined to push away anyone who tried to get close, as if love itself had become their enemy. "I understand, Mrs. Henderson," Victoria said quietly, accepting the resignation with steady hands even as her heart cracked a little more. "Thank you for trying." After the woman left, Victoria knelt beside her children, careful not to step on the broken glass. "Emma, Ethan, we need to talk about this." "We don't want another nanny," Emma declared, her green eyes blazing with a fury that seemed too large for her small frame. "We don't want anyone." "Daddy's not coming back," Ethan added, his voice hollow in a way that made Victoria's chest tighten. "So why do we need anyone to take care of us?" Victoria reached out to touch her son's face, but he jerked away, the rejection hitting her like a physical blow. She tried everything: child psychologists, family therapists, behavioral specialists. Nothing seemed to reach them. Work had become her refuge, the only place where she felt competent, leaving the children in the care of a revolving door of nannies who inevitably fled when faced with the twins' elaborate campaigns of emotional warfare. That evening, as Victoria worked late in her home office, she heard the familiar sound of movement in the hallway. Through her partially open door, she glimpsed a figure mopping the marble floors with methodical precision. Miguel Santos, the night janitor, had been working for the family for almost 3 years, arriving each evening at 9 o'clock to clean the sprawling mansion with a quiet efficiency that had made him nearly invisible to most of the household. He was a small man in his 50s, with weathered hands and kind eyes that seemed to hold depths of understanding. Unlike the parade of nannies, tutors, and therapists who'd passed through their lives, Miguel never complained about the destruction the twins left in their wake. He simply cleaned it up, night after night, without judgment or frustration. Victoria had barely spoken to him beyond the initial interview and annual reviews, but something about his steady presence had always been oddly comforting. While everyone else in their lives seemed to come and go, Miguel remained constant, like a lighthouse in the storm of their shattered family. The next morning brought news that the agency had run out of available nannies willing to work with difficult children. Victoria sat in her office, staring at her phone, knowing she'd have to miss another important meeting to rush home and deal with whatever crisis the twins had created in her absence. That's when she heard laughter. Actual, genuine laughter echoing from somewhere in the house. Victoria followed the sound, her heart racing with a mixture of hope and disbelief. She found herself at the kitchen entrance, peering around the corner at a scene that made her breath catch in her throat. Miguel was sitting at the kitchen island with Emma and Ethan, showing them how to fold colorful pieces of paper. His large, calloused hands moved with surprising delicacy as he demonstrated the ancient art of origami, speaking in a mixture of English and gentle Spanish that somehow made perfect sense to the children. "See, Mija, you fold it like this," he was saying to Emma, his voice warm and patient. "In my country, we believe that every crane you make carries a wish to heaven." "What did you wish for?" Ethan asked, his usual suspicious edge completely absent from his voice. Miguel's smile was gentle as he helped the boy create his first fold. "I wished for two sad little birds to remember how to sing again." Victoria pressed her hand to her mouth, tears threatening to spill over. When was the last time she'd seen her children's faces soft with genuine curiosity instead of hardened by anger? "Why do you clean our messes?" Emma asked suddenly, her small fingers struggling with a particularly complex fold. "Everyone else gets mad at us." Miguel paused in his work, considering the question with the seriousness it deserved. "You know what I think, Beck A tilde plus minus A? I think sometimes when people are hurting very badly inside, they make messes on the outside. It's like your heart is crying, but it doesn't know how to make tears, so it makes broken things instead." The twins exchanged a look that Victoria had never seen before, not the conspiratorial glance of co-conspirators planning destruction, but something deeper. Recognition, perhaps. Understanding. "My mama died when I was about your age," Miguel continued, his hands never stopping their gentle work. "I was so angry at the world, so scared, that I broke many things too. But you know what I learned?" "What?" Both children whispered. "Making messes didn't bring her back, but learning to make beautiful things. That kept her memory alive in my heart." Victoria watched from the doorway as her children, her angry, hurting, unreachable children, slowly began to open like flowers turning toward the sun. Miguel didn't try to fix them or change them or manage their behavior. He simply sat with them in their pain and showed them that broken things could be transformed into something beautiful. Over the following weeks, Victoria found herself leaving work earlier, drawn home by the sound of her children's voices engaged in actual conversation instead of battle cries. Miguel had quietly expanded his role without being asked, arriving earlier to help with homework, staying later to read bedtime stories in his melodic accent that somehow made even the most familiar tales sound magical. He taught them to garden, showing them how seeds could grow in the darkest soil. He showed them how to cook simple meals, explaining that food made with love always tasted better. Most importantly, he talked to them about their father, not as a forbidden subject that brought only pain, but as a person whose love lived on in their memories and in their own capacity to love others. "Say A tilde plus minus or Miguel," Emma said one evening as they watered the small herb garden they'd planted together. "Why didn't you ever have kids?" Miguel's hands stilled on the watering can for just a moment. "My wife and I, we tried for many years, but sometimes God has different plans than we do. I used to think that meant I would never be a papa. But now," he looked at both children with such tenderness that Victoria felt her throat close with emotion. "Now I think maybe God was just waiting for the right children to need me." The transformation wasn't immediate or complete. There were still difficult days, still moments when grief overwhelmed the twins and they lashed out at the world. But now, instead of a parade of strangers trying to contain their pain, they had Miguel, a solid, patient, unshakable Miguel who met their worst days with the same steady kindness he brought to their best ones. Victoria began to see glimpses of the children she'd thought were lost forever. Emma's fierce protectiveness transformed into fierce loyalty to those she loved. Ethan's anger became passion for the things that mattered to him. They were still her complicated, intense, deeply feeling children, but they were no longer broken. 6 months after that first morning of origami and wishes, Victoria made a decision that surprised everyone, including herself. She promoted Miguel from janitor to family manager, a role that encompassed everything from household coordination to childcare to being the steady heartbeat of their healing family. But say A tilde plus minus or Miguel protested when she offered him the position. "I am just a simple man. I clean floors and make paper birds." "Miguel," Victoria said, her voice thick with gratitude, "you did something no one else could do. You saw my children's hearts instead of their behavior. You loved them when they couldn't love themselves. You're not just a simple man, nay, you're the answer to a prayer I didn't even know how to make." The evening news of the appointment spread through Victoria's social circle like wildfire, causing quite a stir among her wealthy peers. Many couldn't understand how she could entrust her children to just the help. But Victoria had learned something profound in those months of watching Miguel work his quiet magic. Titles and credentials meant nothing compared to a heart that could see past pain to the precious souls beneath. At the company holiday party that year, Victoria watched Miguel dancing with both children, their faces bright with joy as he spun them around the floor. Colleagues approached her with barely concealed curiosity about her unconventional childcare choices, but she found she didn't care what they thought. "How did you know?" her assistant asked, nodding toward the dancing trio. "How did you know he was what they needed?" Victoria smiled, thinking of all the expensive specialists and highly credentialed nannies who'd failed where one kind janitor had succeeded. "I didn't," she admitted. "But sometimes the most important people in our lives come disguised as ordinary angels. Miguel didn't try to fix my children, he simply loved them. And love, it turns out, was the only medicine they needed." As she watched her family, for that's what they'd become, the four of them, Victoria felt a peace she hadn't experienced since her husband's death. The house that had once echoed with anger and breaking glass now rang with laughter and Spanish lullabies. Her children, who had pushed away everyone who tried to get close, now raced to the door each evening to greet Miguel with enthusiasm that warmed her heart. Sometimes the most profound changes in our lives come not from grand gestures or expensive solutions, but from simple acts of consistent kindness. Miguel had taught them all that healing doesn't happen in the bright spotlight of attention, but in the quiet moments when someone chooses to see your worth even when you can't see it yourself. And in a world that often seemed to value credentials over character, accomplishments over compassion, one humble janitor had proven that the most important qualification for touching hearts is simply having one willing to be broken open by love.